Welcome to Studio 58A live here at the Jamaica Information Service, our discussion program coming to you live on Facebook. I'm your host, Vaughn Davis. Thank you to everyone tuning in wherever you are around the world. We really do appreciate it. Thank you very much for your eyes. And like how we have your attention, do us a favor now. Share this video with a friend or 2 or 5,000 so we can have a very lively discussion. And as you watch, remember to send in your questions and your comments so we can put them to our guest. Now, inclusivity, it's a long word for a very simple concept. It essentially means creating opportunities for all groups within our society to participate in and benefit from developments happening in the country. Inclusivity is especially important for persons in our vulnerable groups, particularly persons with disabilities. On today's program, we're zeroing in on the persons in the deaf community, specifically some of the challenges being experienced by the community as regards ensuring they get the best education that they can. And we're going to examine some of the other issues affecting the community, get information out there so that the necessary stakeholders can hopefully help provide the solutions. Here today to help us do this is Executive Director of the Jamaica Association for the Deaf, Kimberly Sherlock Marriot-Blake. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so let's just, before we even get into that, let's talk about the Jamaica Association for the Deaf and what exactly its specific roles are in Jamaica.
Okay, so the JAD is an 80-year-old organization. We've been around since 1938, and we actually started out supporting education for deaf students. In addition to our education division, where we manage 7 schools and units, and we support the development of deaf education across the island, we also support training of persons. So anyone interested in learning sign language can get in touch with us, and we're able to support that training and, of course, even influencing policy and education development across the island when it comes on to our deaf students and students with multiple disabilities. Then we have social services, because once the kids graduate, we need to be able to support them.
Right.
And even before they get into school, we need to be able to support them. So our social services division is looking at anything related to family support, education support, whether it's with student sponsorship or kind of guiding parents to the right school that they need to be placing their students at. We do guidance for families, guidance for individuals, and community development, helping the community to be more cohesive and to advocate on their own, while also supporting them and kind of sharing information so that they're better able to advocate and more aware of what's going on around them. Then we have our business division, where we are doing our social enterprises. Enterprises that are powering the work that we do. So one of those enterprises is our Hearing Assessment Center, JD Hearing Services, and the core focus of there is to ensure that we can assess persons to identify hearing loss, to support them in the best way possible, because you can't support if you don't know there's a challenge. And of course that means kind of helping to get students in school. Our bindery is a fine hand bindery that can create some of the most amazing things for you. We can also restore books. So some persons we know are book people who really want to feel the paper. Or maybe you have a Bible or a book that is coming down from generations, and somehow a little water catched and it needs to get nicely redone to give it a little more oomph, and we're able to do that. Then there's the boring side, where, administration.
So it sounds like a one-stop shop kind of facility for the deaf community in Jamaica. Yeah. So if you need any kind of help or something to just point you in the direction to get the social services you need, you're the organization to come check to.
That's right.
So I understand that there's an issue now. It seems that there are less and less persons with or persons in the deaf community being enrolled in educational institutions. You're finding that happening more and more. Can you explain to persons why that's a challenge and what exactly is the situation regarding that?
So if we're to look at World Health Organization standards, the World Health Organization states that in any one population, particularly in developing countries, approximately 15% of the population are persons with disabilities. When you disaggregate that to different types of disabilities, maybe about 3 to 5% are persons with hearing loss. Now that hearing loss can be from as low as, minimal hearing loss, or as serious as profoundly deaf, and usually persons who are profoundly deaf are users of sign language. For us, one of the things that we acknowledge is that education is, as a country, has been a significant factor in helping to improve people's lives and to ensure that people are able to benefit from whatever services and provisions the government or other agencies are offering, particularly employment. Let's be realistic, yeah? So when we recognize that reduction in the number of students coming into school, we begin to question what then happens to someone who is in fact deaf, who has not been in school, how are they able to access support? How are they able to engage in their environment? It probably means that there is no standardized language that they're using, which means that even if there's an emergency there, it's very difficult to assist and support them. Now, the reduction is something that it's a bit of a toss-up as to whether it's a good thing. You know, it's a good thing, bad thing, because what has happened over the last maybe 15, 20 years, we've had significant improvements in healthcare. Over the last 2 or 3 decades, things like rubella have significantly reduced. The government has ensured a system of immunization that has really ensured and supported some of our young people and ensuring that they don't catch some of these deadly diseases that we know can have a very serious impact in the event that the person does not die. What we have noticed is with the increase in immunization, with women waiting a little longer to have children because they're trying to really get family planning and personal health handled, with persons not necessarily having as many children, with persons not having children as close as they used to, you're having less incidence of disability. At least less incidence of disability in its purest form.
Right.
What we're starting to see more of are a combination of disabilities. So you're more likely to see someone who is deaf with autism.
Okay.
Or who has cerebral palsy and also has some level of blindness or hearing loss. And so that is our additional reason for being a little concerned that our schools are empty, because it means that there's a student who really needs support who's not being adequately supported. Today, our schools are maybe at about 50% capacity. We know, based on our ENT doctors, based on our own hearing assessment center, we know that there are kids out there who need assistance. We know that there are kids out there with hearing loss. We know that quite a few of them are nicely stuck in a classroom of 44 in a mainstream school, just kind of going through the ropes, not meeting requirements, but parents haven't yet bought into the idea or have felt that compelling,
or maybe the teachers,
that little nudge.
Right. They just haven't gotten the necessary information to say maybe your child might need some specialized assistance because he's not hearing properly. Right.
And what we've recognized too is that some schools are taking it a little bit more seriously. So if a teacher recognizes that in grade 1, Johnny seems to have done very well at the grade 1 assessment. Grade 2, Johnny is not doing too badly, but I expected more from him. Grade 3, okay, what's going on? Because I realized Johnny is not quite here. He doesn't seem to be paying much attention. And so some schools, because many of them are really fighting to ensure that they get the best when they do at national assessments, they'll write a note to that parent and say, dear parent, we recognize that your child is not seeming to process as he or she used to, and we're recommending the following assessments. Usually it's test for vision, test for hearing, and test for some or any cognition challenges. Most parents, they get very excited about the test for vision because we've gotten a little bit more open to persons having a vision loss, aka needing glasses. Many persons who wear glasses don't really see themselves as persons who actually need additional support. The fact that when those glasses come off, you have to feel everything means that you need some support, right? But many parents aren't quite as open to the cognitive and the hearing loss assessments.
Right, so they feel like, then again, there's also the issue that might very be expensive hearing aids and things like that aren't exactly cheap, you know what I mean?
Yes. While the hearing assessment done through JD's services are a lot less expensive than if you were to go to private services, a hearing aid can be a very expensive venture, and like glasses or any other assistive aid, they have to be modified as the person gets older and as their situation changes.
Right, and so on that basis, you find that many persons might just choose to ignore the problem, so to speak, and hope for the best.
Or get the assessment, and it is noted that you have a hearing loss, and then I say, all right, so we can't send them back to this school. Come, we can find another school. And the child just kind of bounces around until it gets to maybe grade 4, because now with PEP, there's that readiness that this child has to present. And if the child doesn't present that readiness is when, unfortunately, at grade 4, the child is coming over to a school for the deaf with minimal language, with minimal readiness, and
so they're already behind.
They're significantly behind. And now them having to grapple with, okay, so I really can't hear. This is not just me thinking that, okay,
something's wrong with me.
Something's wrong with me. This is a real situation, and depending on how the parents respond, it can be a really emotional and trying time for a student, particularly in the teen years.
And so what the situation now is that you have a lot of children out there who might very well need your assistance, but for whatever reason or not, for, I guess, social reasons or economic reasons, whatever the case may be, they're just not making decision to send their children to get the specialized help that they need.
Right.
And that's creating a problem because you can just imagine it's already difficult enough for persons in the disabled community, specifically even the deaf community, to get jobs after you leave school and so on. So imagine when you don't even get the proper educational guidance to begin with.
Yep.
All right. So, well, I understand. Talk to me about the kind of education that persons get when the specialized education that maybe some people just need convincing, what do they get when they get, apart from, I guess, for example, learning sign language or something like that, but what kind of training do they get?
So we take on a bilingual approach, and we acknowledge too that one of the limitations that exists, which is not something that we can really readily fix, is the fact that there are only 12 schools for the deaf across the island. So you really have a small group of schools to pick from. I mean, I believe in Region 1, the ministry has thousands of primary schools and thousands of high schools. And so as a parent, you can kind of pick closer to home, what you like more, alumni, that kind of a thing. You have so many different options, and so that can be a limiting factor. But for us, at our schools for the deaf education is done through a bilingual approach. So we have little ones in preschool who have signing capacity that would make you think that this is a native of sign language. And in some cases, they're coming in as a blank slate, and it's at school that they're learning sign language. And so once you set a standard in sign language, you're better able to teach English. Now, you and I would have caught English in a number of ways. We would have heard it. And if your parents were those parents, you're catching a good amount of it on radio. So you got the Louise Bennett side and you got the anti-face side. You got standard and you got dialect. You would have caught on to conversation. So it may not have been direct, but you comprehended mommy is also Denise on the basis that you hear some people call her Denise and you hear some people call her mommy. There's a level of awareness that you can garner because you have hearing. So in our school for the deaf, we're able to support students to kind of guide them in acquiring information that they would not have caught otherwise. So for example, a student who comes in, the space is very visual. So even if you don't exactly know what sign I'm using, there's a photo that is connecting to a sign. And then after moving from photo and sign connection, it becomes photo, sign, and word connection. And even now, through a project that we're doing with USAID, we've been able to set and structure a Jamaican Sign Language grammar curriculum similar to an English language curriculum that hearing students would be using. So as a hearing student, you're going to school and from day one you're learning English. Our kids are coming in, they're learning English and they're learning sign language at the same time. And so since little ones are sponges,
just works.
It just works because as sign language skills develop, so do the English skills, and they're in a better position to really navigate life and to really function as anyone else who would be an English language user.
Let me just take a moment to check in with those online who are showing us some love. Weedy Shields, appreciate your comment. Weedy says, hello from Washington, D.C. Thank you for your eyes. Yvonne Forrester says, good afternoon. Good afternoon to you, Yvonne. Really appreciate it. Lincoln Beswick, thank you, Lincoln, for your comment. He says, well done for what your organization have been doing for so long, as well as telling about all that you are doing. Well done. Lots of hand claps and points out to you. So good.
Thank you.
Good afternoon to Richard Porteous, one of our longtime viewers. Really appreciate your eyes, Ricardo, as always. Curtis Anthony Simpson says, hi, appreciate your comment, Curtis. Appreciate it. All right, so a lot of persons are showing us some love. Really appreciate it. Stay tuned as we try to unpack this issue of helping the members of the deaf community in Jamaica. Now, I understand that maybe technology is one of the best resources to assist persons. I'm thinking beyond just even a hearing aid. I'm thinking that you probably have other assistive aids that help persons. And I think that might be one of the reasons why you might be seeing less persons. I'm wondering what impact technology is having in making it easier to treat with a person who is deaf, for example, in a more mainstream context like a school or maybe even at home or something like that.
Well, I mean, technology has definitely been a benefit. Even for us, when you have what a consider the same way that we have a speech to text, we talk to our phones.
Right,
okay, Google, do this, do that. you do have systems embedded in phones and on tablets and on laptops where it's a captioning system. So it's live captioning. So once the system is able to pick up on a particular accent, I could be speaking and it is live captioning for someone who's deaf. Right. That requires, though, a strong understanding of English, because a lot of the things that we take for granted, like the word run, the word run could be running in an election. You are running like boats. It's a runny nose, a runny pipe, a run in the stocking. There's so many different contexts, and we collect the context based on a context clue. Now, unless that context clue is very clear and the concept is something that makes sense. Right. Seeing that in text, you're just like, okay, a running nose. No, you try to visualize a running bolt, running nose. You see, that don't make no sense. Right. And it could have, you'd be like, this person has no sense. Because what are you talking about? Similarly, though, technology has been a great benefit. I, for one, WhatsApp is a winner when it comes to trying to just understand what the community needs. Right. I will just pop in, send a WhatsApp message, can I call you now? And it's a video call, and I am signing with somebody who needs assistance right now. Fantastic. But we do know that when it comes down to putting kids in school, technology can be a support, because there's so many different ways and apps that you can use to increase a child's options or different means by which they're acquiring information. What we're very careful of, though, is that particularly persons who have hearing loss as degenerative, it might just be a slight hearing loss today. Right. As you get older and it becomes more significant, and maybe you're in a context where writing is not going to be the quickest way to relay information, having the sign language is of great benefit to you then, because even if you are, for example, a Spanish speaker, as you've acquired Spanish, you've gotten to the level where you're strong enough to move into another country and you can communicate. There are certain concepts that just make a lot more sense to you in English. Right. It just makes a lot more sense to you in English because it's something that you're more comfortable expressing. And so we appreciate that there will be a child with hearing loss with a hearing aid who's placed in a mainstream school, and that's fine. You will have a student who just needs preferential treatment as it relates to seating and assessment. That's okay.
Well, yeah, that begs the question for me. For example, if you're a teacher in, for example, an ECI or maybe in a primary school, something like that, I would like to believe that if you got to high school, unless, for example, you get some kind of degenerative issue and you start to lose your hearing at that stage, I'd like to believe that if you are at an ECI or a primary school, that is when some of the signs and symptoms would start to manifest themselves. So the question is, what do you look for? For example, if you're a teacher, just coming across this video, just coming across this issue, and you might have you just start some bells start alarming in your head. They said, Johnny, always, when I call him from the left side, I'm going to call him from the right side. You understand? So what do you look for as a teacher in a school like that, or especially, for some of our rural schools might not have ready access to this kind of information? What do you look for, and how do you have to raise that alarm in your mind to know that maybe I should check him out?
There are a few things that you can look out for. One of the things that we have fallen into a trap with when it comes down to education is that in most cases, the teacher is at the front and the students are looking at the teacher. Now, if this child is accustomed to having to kind of process certain things in a particular way. So, for example, this is a teacher I know, I'm very comfortable with them, and I'm in a better position to read their lips. I mean, lip reading is probably the most unsure mode of communication because all of you and I love you look the same.
That's true.
But if it's, I mean, when my husband and I are in a space where we're trying to communicate and he says something, I can pick up on the lip reading because I am accustomed and familiar enough with his mode of communication. Right. So a child who's been in the class with teacher for 3 months would have kind of caught on to certain things, and they're just like. But if teacher was to stand behind him and say the same thing, does he move? Does he respond? Does he do anything?
But if you have the teacher who just like what you said before, likes to stand at the front of the classroom, point to the board and say 2 + 2 is 4.
And you're pointing to them.
There must be some other way that they can look for it.
So one of the things that we do encourage some teachers to do is to find out what's happening at home. We had a student who came in at about grade 8. When you speak to the parent said, boy, from she gone to high school, she just bad. It's not bad, she bad. She had ear infection that wasn't adequately addressed. And that ear infection
progressed to something worse.
Progressed to the point where it significantly impacted her hearing. And so unless mommy was shouting, I could not hear mommy. But, you know, as a parent, you're thinking, yup, high school and bad company. Look at this now. Crisis.
Right.
Not realizing that it could have been something else. And so teachers can look at when kids get sick and how often do kids get sick. Because that could be a identifying factor for a number of other illnesses and issues that they need to consider. Consider too, does that child seem to function better in small groups or one-on-one or in the larger classroom? Because a student who is not hearing you clearly is almost always going to come and say, teacher, did you say, when you said, you know, and that could also be a student who's having a challenge seeing or having a challenge processing certain information. If it is that you need to be providing information in a very visual way all the time, it could be that that student is not able to process when they're hearing it. Another nice mode that I heard a teacher say recently is the student who is not taking notes.
Okay.
It could be that
he's
he's having
he's
not really hearing anything. He's just giving you the nod you need. Yep. And then him turn and say, everybody else laugh. I laugh too. You know, teacher said turn. You see everybody else turning, you start turn and shuffling too, and then maybe they lean to the person and say,
Right.
But it's little things, and unfortunately, it's a little bit challenging for teachers. When you have a class of 44 kids, it's a little challenging to really kind of get to know your kids one-on-one,
right.
You know.
Let's focus on those who are doing well, and we're going to work with those, and those that are ones, them are the bad one, run at the back, so we're just
can't bother with them, and that actually makes the situation worse, because there's also that factor of sometimes it could be their peer groups.
Right.
If you have a child who doesn't necessarily interact with many people or doesn't interact at all, it could be an indication that he or she is having some challenges engaging or communicating. And so, you know, as I said, one definite surefire way to check it is this child responding to you? Right. Is this child expressing themselves? Because a lot of expression is based on what you hear.
Right, and there's also, I guess, body language and so many other things.
Oh yeah, body language. Yeah.
A child who them and say, Johnny.
A child who flinches when you get closer to their ears, that may be an indication that there's actually an ear infection or something that has, or some pain in the ear or a ringing in the ear that's actually impacting it. But especially if a student is not seeming to respond or does not seem to express.
All right, so I have a question from Keisha Henry. Thank you, Keisha, for your question. She's asked, do you educate the teachers in schools about this? I guess the question is, how often do you, I guess, try to sensitize some of the teachers about some of the things to look out for, so that the kids, you know, don't get left behind, you know what I mean? Well,
because we work along with the ministry, or partner with the ministry in managing our schools, quite a bit of preparation for teachers happens through the ministry. The ministry does have a special education unit, and they do work with some of the teachers' colleges to get information out to teachers. Unfortunately, that's more of a proactive than a reactive system. One of the things that we have been taking on as an organization now, we're open to coming to locations and giving you sensitizations. We're willing to have even maybe one of our teachers come in to your group of teachers and speak to them about how we engage our students and how we support our students in the best way possible. But as a teacher, one of the things that we are definitely open to hearing more about is what areas are of concern to you. Is it that you're recognizing a particular situation? Is it a case where you notice that within your school system this seems to be a challenge? We're definitely open to hearing, because like I said, we have a reduction in number of students, and we're trying to figure out exactly why. Some of the teaching colleges have expressed, oh, well, you know, we're not getting that many requests from schools for the deaf. Not many schools we know teach deaf education, and so that's a limitation. But we've been trying to get more information out, and we've actually kind of started working on some partnership with the teachers' colleges to really support more of the teachers in school and to help in kind of forming as a part of those continuing credits that teachers have to do, those professional development days. Right. But we're definitely willing to come in on a professional development day for a group of teachers and really just speak to them and help to gauge and to support in identifying not just hearing loss, but just disability in general with the student population that they work with.
got another question here from Dominique Graham. Thank you, Dominique, for your question. She says, I believe in allowing for Jamaican Sign Language to be added to the school's curriculum in the mainstream schools. Helps to remove barriers and move more to inclusion. This will also aid in breaking communication barriers between the hearing and deaf culture. So
yes.
I guess that begs the question of how do you feel about that? I know that it is a thrust, and there is a group who strongly believes that you should just teach everybody. That everybody gets some sign language experience so they can communicate with each other.
A little bit to work on.
Better understanding, that kind of thing. So where do you come down on that issue?
Oh, we are definitely in favor of it. We actually got a great contact from a prep school in Kingston, keeping it kind of hush-hush because I'm not sure if they're ready for it to be all known, but they want to teach grades 1 and 2. And their thinking is, if we give them at grade 1 and 2, then they'll have a good foundation to build on. Now, one of the things to consider, as you know, the viewer mentioned, is it's a good way to get inclusion kind of ingrained in a little mind, a little nice, impressionable mind from very early. But there's also a lot of research that speaks to having students, particularly at very young ages, introduced to various languages helps to boost their brain development and helps to increase their language development. And so we're in favor of it. We're definitely, I mean, one of the things that we've been working on is trying to structure resources that we can begin sharing with people. We've been doing Jamaican Sign Languages at level 1 and level 2 at a community level. So you won't be fluent, but you'll be able to kind of ask, you know, how are you? What are your challenges? Do you need anything? Can I help you? Good morning. Good evening. You know, Jamaican people take morning and evening things serious, you know. You walk into a room and you don't get good morning. And unfortunately for the deaf community, you go into a space and you sign good morning and nobody else knows it. They're just like, all him know, no manners. Didn't even say morning. When that's not the case, you know.
The next question from Candice Christian, thank you, Candice, is that are there training opportunities for teachers to learn JSL to communicate with deaf and hard of hearing students in the regular system? And I would imagine it's more than just teachers. It's random person
teacher,
like us.
Nurse, doctor, police officer, everything. We're actually structuring some additional programs now. We've worked with the justice system in preparing some of their clerks of courts. Even if you don't have the full sign language competence, you have a little bit. And you can pass the good morning and you can say, here is the file, and sorry, we're not ready yet, and that kind of a thing. Guilty, not guilty, you know. But we've been actually working with the ministry to structure a program specifically for teachers. Specifically for teachers who are in the system, who are wanting or needing to learn it based on the fact that they already have a student with a mild or moderate hearing loss or a mild or moderate disability in their school space. And we've been working with the justice system, the healthcare system. We've really been trying to get it out there. What I'll be honest with is that is a paid service.
Yeah.
And so there are some persons who don't want to pay for the service. And so that kind of limits. But we are very open to being as supportive as possible to persons who have a vested interest in learning, because we want more people to learn.
Regina, I'm glad you mentioned paid service, because it brings me to the next point, which is creating employment and economic opportunities for members of the deaf community, and not just them. I guess it's fall within the wider spectrum of the persons with disabilities, because we know that it's often difficult to get economic and employment opportunities for them. Now, one of the arguments you come across often is that it's difficult to or expensive rather, to accommodate persons who are deaf in the workplace for whatever reason. It might be that you might have to hire a person who can talk to them or communicate them in sign language, that kind of thing, or you might have to have, hearing aids, this or that. There's just a perception that it's more of a cost or more of a challenge than as opposed to hiring a regular person. Is such a thing real, or is more of a myth?
It's a bit of a myth. I think one of the important things that we express to partners and to businesses, when a deaf person works in your organization, you're likely to get deaf clientele. You know, you and I know, if you have a friend that goes to a particular location, it's a terrible experience, you tell everybody about it, maybe you and your friend's not going back there.
Exactly.
Similarly, when an organization hires a deaf person, there's a level of appreciation and willingness and openness that community gets to the organization. It's also, we know, yes, you're going to need a sign language interpreter at some point. If you're having a staff meeting and you're sharing that emergency plan, it would kind of be, the most appropriate thing to have an interpreter in the space, because you don't want it to be that someone is collecting the information secondhand. Similarly, though, it's not as bad as you'd want to think. A deaf person is not, or even any person with a disability, their needs are not going to be far different from anyone else. Let's think about the fact that in many cases, if you go into certain businesses these days, everybody has in headphones. So if you have an alarm that is audio only, 9 out of 10, you know, Tom, who is having the best time doing his job with his headphones in, listening to whatever he's listening to, he ain't hearing no alarm. Similarly, a deaf person isn't going to hear it.
Right.
An inclusive system would be a light and sound alarm. One of those alarms that's going to give you a bright red light and similarly give you that piercing, annoying sound.
Right.
That's beneficial for everybody. Similarly, it would mean using even free tools. At the office, like I said, we use WhatsApp. We use Skype if we need to have a meeting between locations. We use the ever so great Google. I mean, Google Chat solves so many problems for us because you just open Google Chat and you have a quick conversation with somebody hearing or deaf, and it saves you a telephone call.
Right.
Realistically, it saves us money because it's not a telephone call, but then it also kind of puts you in a space where you can communicate with a deaf person and engage and get information from them in that mode right there.
Question I have is do you find that relative to the entire population of deaf people, I don't know if you know exactly just how many, I have like an approximation of how many deaf persons there are in Jamaica.
About 70,000.
All right. And in terms of that now, do you find out of that cohort, how many of them are taking advantage of the opportunities that are available to them? Because, I mean, granted, you know, I suppose nothing is perfect, but there are enough that if you want it, you can access it, and then you can make, you know, you can achieve the things that you want, you know, those economic opportunities, those social opportunities, and so on. Yeah. I would like to, I guess, get an idea of how many are taking advantage, how many know that they are rather than just sitting home and just saying, oh, I'm deaf, you know. People have the world has to just take care of me now, that kind of attitude, as opposed to those who are being proactive and saying, okay, I need to get up and do something for myself, you know.
Well, a lot of it depends on parenting. A lot of it depends on community. We have parents who strongly believe that they send their child to school because government says so. Not because they believe the child will learn, not because they believe that the support is going to be adequate, but then at the flip, when you see those parents at a graduation and recognize that, sorry, like, for example, we had a student whose scores at PEP were at national average. Had that child not been deaf, he could have gone to any school he wanted.
Right.
And so, for some parents, while his parents were very much aware of the investment they made, some parents were like, oh, wow, so my child, could I get that too? So their perception is, if it's very negative going in, it can be very negative for young people. And so that becomes an internal sense of, or lack of self-worth, which makes it a lot harder for them to be able to engage in these opportunities. There's also the community. The idea of calling somebody deafy is just not going to fly. It's so discriminatory, but we don't recognize it.
Yeah, in Jamaica, that's because I mean, you know,
it's almost a term of endearment.
That is exactly the thing I was about to
one
say.
and deafy and all these things. It's seen almost as a term of endearment, but it can actually be a very negative, internalizing reality for many people. What I know, there are many deaf persons who have been trying to engage in opportunities. Over the last few years, since the resurgence of the youth parliament, we have had 2 deaf persons serving youth parliament in every cycle. We have, through the support of, you know, our partner agencies and organizations and schools like the CD schools, the Caribbean Christian Centers for the Deaf, and their social enterprise Deaf Can, we've seen more deaf people out there, and so more deaf persons kind of say, okay, so you know, if you can do it, I can do it too.
Right.
One of the challenges that we're still trying to address and the barrier we're trying to break down is that cultural belief.
All right, which once again brings
that
us to the next
cultural
question.
Belief that
what are some of the things that persons in the deaf community want persons who are hearing to understand and appreciate that, look, this might just be a little bit insensitive to a person with their condition?
Hearing impaired is insensitive. My hearing is not impaired. I just don't hear.
Okay.
People who wear glasses do not see themselves as visually impaired.
Okay.
And if you don't see yourself as visually okay, so apparently the camera crew here don't see themselves as potentially visually impaired. But one of the things that have changed over the years is that the scope and concept of disability has significantly changed.
Right.
So the idea of acknowledging an impairment is something that we no longer do. Even at a UN level, one of the things that they encourage is what's known as people-first language. I am not a deaf person. I am a person who is deaf. I am a person who has hearing loss because I'm a person first.
Right.
And so looking at me and saying, oh God, this poor little deaf one, jeez, I'm not going to help him because I think he can manage. Allow me to come to you and kind of ask you for help. This is a sign for help. Or maybe they'll just mouth it. Help. And they'll ask you for some assistance. It's not an assumption that someone needs help because they have a disability. One of the other things that I'm sure, we've had so many discussions about as a community. My disability does not negate my abilities. So I can't hear, but yes, I can still help on a construction site. And yes, I can still get a job in an office. We have a deaf person who's worked for years with Guardsman in payroll. And she's doing quite fine.
Right.
Functioning in her space, in accounting, because let's be honest, I don't know about you, but most accounting people I know, they're not necessarily the speaky spokey type.
I guess not. Yeah.
They're not necessarily interested in the chatting and the, them kind of focus on them numbers.
Right.
And that requires a level of visual acuity that a deaf person will have.
Right, of course.
Another thing would be acknowledging that there are some cultural beliefs that are aligned to deafness, but they are not a reality. No, my deafness is not generations. Me not paying for something that my grandfather
generational
did.
curse or something
Some
like
generational
that,
curse. No, nobody obeyed me. No, is not becoming it fast in people conversations and become deaf. There's so many little beliefs and assumptions. No, there is no bush tea that is going to get my deafness to go away. No, you cannot pray away my deafness. We've been to churches where, for our anniversary service or so on, and somebody says, and we pray away the spirit of deafness. I remember when it happened on one occasion, and a student turned around and said, can we leave now? He just said, Can we just leave? Because this person sees me
as some kind of affliction.
As being possessed.
Right, yeah.
It's not that the deafness is a part of who I am. The deafness is a problem that's limiting who I am. And that's not the case. That's not the case. So you will have persons, realistically speaking, persons who are not provided the opportunity to engage in education will, of course, have a limited
view. They don't
view.
Just simply because they just don't know.
They just don't know. There's also the reality that in the same case of our general national statistics and national realities, you will have deaf persons who do not have the requisite credentials for some of the jobs that they aspire to, because realistically speaking, you weren't provided the opportunity to become educated. You weren't provided with the opportunity to kind of explore skills and areas that you're good at. And so maybe I only have 2 CXEs, but there's a hearing person out there with just 2 CXEs.
That's true.
And in the same way that a provision can be made for a person with 2 CXEs to get more CXEs, a deaf person with 2 CXEs should be no different.
That's true.
And so it's giving a person a chance, kind of opening the door, because an accessible organization is a smarter organization. An accessible organization tends to be a lot more open and aware of just what it means to truly meet staff and clientele where they need it. And that's something that we need to get to the point where we're kind of accepting that, yes, all your staff is not going to be the same. Some of them may have a disability.
All right.
It doesn't make them less of a staff member, though.
A couple of questions coming in from Candice Christian. I guess she wants to know how much it costs, I guess, to learn, how much it costs to learn sign language at Jamaica Association. But if you want to come and get them up, get an introductory level, I guess if you want to go even further, who knows.
Our introductory level course is $12,000 per course. The course is 10 sessions. We do kind of alternate between having 2 sessions per week for 5 weeks or 1 session per week for 10 weeks. Kind of depending on your schedule, you know.
Yeah,
the busy person with many things to do may not be able to manage 2 evenings a week, and that's just a level 1 to give you the basics and to give you some awareness of deaf culture and the services and supports that's provided. And that's if you're coming individually, but we do offer a special rate for groups. So if we're coming to your organization to teach a number of staff members, we try to limit our numbers to maybe about 22 people because the larger our class is the harder it is to kind of manage. But if you are running a class with 22 people, we can work out a particular price that will structure and work for what you need, and a time schedule and so on. It may be every day, it may be once a week, maybe one afternoon, one morning, whatever it is that works best for you.
All right, and she asked again, are you able to say how many deaf students are in the regular school system?
Boy, that one is tough. We don't know exactly how many deaf students, but based on the fact that we assess maybe about 3,000 students per year, or children of school age, maybe about 3,000, or we assess 3,000 overall. Of that 3,000, maybe 25% of them have a hearing loss of some kind. It may be that some of those are placed in our school for the deaf based on their need. It may be that some of those are placed in another school, another special institution, because if, for example, there is another disability, we won't be able to manage independently, and so they may be placed at School of Hope for best fit education placement. Or they may be placed in mainstream with a hearing aid or with just preferential treatment in the class.
And she's asked, last question, she's asking, what are the do's and don'ts for school administrators in communicating with students who are deaf?
One thing definitely is to not acknowledge their deafness as the problem. We are of the firm belief that the system is the problem, not the person. So, you know, it's the administrators would have to be very aware and kind of acknowledge the fact that it may mean some modifications in how they structure and manage systems. As you can imagine, for one, based on where I went to school, there was an intercom system. A deaf person's not catching anything over that intercom system. So it may just mean kind of having a buddy, somebody who's going to sit beside them and say, oh, by the way, you know, this is what was just said, in the case where the intercom system is used. It does mean no sensitizing all your teachers. And one of the things that I have been made aware of more often now than before, we need to acknowledge too that the user of a school system may not be a deaf child, but a deaf parent with a hearing child.
Yes, that is also
because
true.
These adults do have kids, and they do need to be adequately supported at a PTA meeting. They need to be adequately supported at those one-on-one meetings to tell you how great or how mischievous your child is. They need to be adequately supported when there's graduation or school leaving events and you know, Christmas concerts, Easter concerts, all these things, because you don't want it to be a situation where a parent wants to parent.
Right. And
as a school system, you've been very limited in providing that support for them.
All right. I know at one point maybe you had a work mainstreaming program where I guess you provide persons with hearing, deaf persons with the ability to help them go into the world of work in a much more easy way. Is this something that you're still going on with? Is it something how can persons benefit? I guess what are some of the things that you teach them or show them in that program?
So our transition services units in our social services division does school to work transition. And that comes with two components. One side of it is engaging the employer, kind of doing that little quick assessment to ensure that the space is ready for a deaf person, the alarm system is ready. In the event that you're not there with the alarm system yet, they can recommend some other methods that we can use. On the part of the deaf person, we offer training. Our training, unfortunately, is kind of cycled, so it's not come in today and you get training today. It may be that you have to enroll in the system, in the program, and you're getting work readiness skills, all the skills in how to dress, ways that as a deaf person you can engage a hearing person who may not know sign language, ways to go about highlighting or reporting any discrimination or discrepancies that you may find between maybe what you were told you were going to get paid and what you're seeing on a pay slip are two different things. Maybe you're recognizing that there is an issue with your system, your computer system, or whatever it is. Just kind of helping persons to understand how do you go about addressing certain situations in a work environment. And so it's not necessarily very specific to a particular work environment, but it's very general to ensure that whatever environment they're placed in, they're better able, as a deaf person going into a workspace, I can manage. It kind of explains the whole difference between compassionate leave, sick leave, vacation.
So just give you that real breakdown.
Just give you the real breakdown, because companies use different words, casual versus departmental leave, but kind of just ensuring that there's a clear enough foundation that any company can build on.
One more question from Candace Christian, and it will be the last one from us. Does the JAD visit schools upon request and deliver special presentations about the deaf community to the staff and students? And if yes, how is the request made?
Yes, we do. We are definitely willing to come in. We call them sensitizations, and a sensitization can be as basic as kind of what we're getting here and giving a little bit more detail in relation to your specific location, or it can be nice and in-depth, and it includes the whole learning sign language and all of that stuff. You can get in touch with us, 876 9701778 or you can make contact with our social services division because that's where some of those sensitizations and engagements would happen. So it's social services at jamdeaf.org.jm.
And I guess just to bring things full circle, once again, just talk about the importance of making sure, as we said, the enrollment for deaf students seems to be getting low and low. And I mean, there are positive reasons for that, more technology, more awareness, more all of that. But at the same time, it could very well be that there are gaps in the system and there are persons falling through the cracks. So we want to make sure that those who need the help are getting the help. So I just wanted to touch just sound off on that for one last time as we move to wrap.
Okay, well, the importance of it really is ensuring that a child is provided with the education placement that is best suited for their needs and for their realities. We acknowledge that across the system now, when we assess and identify children with hearing loss, one of the major challenges is that parents are not quite ready to accept the diagnosis. And so we encourage, if you are a member of a church, a member of a community club, you see somebody at work and you recognize that a child is not responding or expressing easily or as they should for their age group, get the child assessed. Because we know that even if it's not hearing loss, it could be something else. And ensuring that they're assessed and provided with the right support means they would have the opportunity to be in the best placed education system. We know one of the things that the ministry speaks about is every child can learn and every child must learn, and we are strong believers in that. We know that regardless of the disability, a child can learn with the right support, the right language provisions, with parents having the right support to ensure that they are acquiring the language as well. We know that a child can be successful. We have a number of stories coming into the deaf community with successful people who are at the same level, if not, I mean, I have a deaf person that sometimes when I write the English, I send it to her and ask her if it's sound all right. Because her English is A1.
Okay.
You know? And they're persons with various skills. Don't take for granted that your child could very well have the skill set that could make them millions, you know? It's almost an assumption that when a child has a disability that nothing can happen for them anymore.
Right.
It's over. But there's so many fields now, and with technology on the rise and with, you know, a level of awareness, even if not locally, internationally, coming with persons with disabilities, there are amazing opportunities out there for kids. So the worry and the fear of being seen as the person with the deaf child and that kind of thing is something that in 2019 we need to kind of throw away. Ensuring that your child is getting the best support that they can get is critical. And even if you're not quite ready for school placement, even if the child is just 1 or 2, you can always get in touch with our family services officer. She is, calling the same number or emailing the same social services at JamDeaf. She will be able to kind of guide you. She'll be able to sit down with you. She has a deaf child herself. So she can sit with you and say, listen, Mommy, I know exactly what you're going through, trying to make sense of this hearing loss. Here's what you can start supporting before you get into school placement. Here's what you can do to choose the right educational placement for your child. And so we are really just encouraging anyone, any and everybody. If the nurse sees it when they come for clinic, if the teacher sees it when the child is in school, if the officer happens to pick up on it, where you just having a discussion with a child and you realize they're not responding, there are so many different avenues now for engaging with our young people, and we want to ensure that there are similar avenues for them to get support.
All right, there you have it. I don't think I could have added, I don't think I need to add anything more. So it's really, the onus is over on us as a society, and specifically parents and so on, guardians, school administrators, that kind of thing, to give a look out, because it's easy for us to overlook the persons in the vulnerable groups in our society. It's easy for us to just not see them sometimes because it's just more convenient. It's just more convenient to do so. But when you really stop and appreciate the fact that everybody deserves the opportunity to live their best life, have the opportunities that they want in life, it's all about inclusiveness. Remember that big word, that's a very simple concept. Just making sure that everyone has an opportunity to realize their dreams, their ambitions, that kind of thing, and be the best person that they want to be. So with that said, it's for us to look out for the members of the deaf community.
Yes.
And to make sure we provide as many opportunities to them as possible. And for parents and persons of those, I guess, who are young and old, because I guess you can develop a condition as you get older and you start to lose your hearing. Just make the necessary adjustments so we can look out for them so that they can go to the schools, get the right training, and take their rightful place in society. Okay? All right. With that said, it's time for us to wrap. Thank you to everyone who tuned into our discussion, especially those of you who sent in your questions and your comments. We really appreciate that. Thank you very much. And if you send in a question and we didn't answer it in our discussion, not to worry. We'll be going through afterwards and we'll be able to pick out and channel them to our guests so we can get the right information. Remember, our audience plays a major part in our show. So if there's anyone you'd like for us to have in studio, let us know. And we'll try our best to have that person in the studio as soon as possible. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Jamaica Information Service. While I'm at it, are you guys on social media, right?
Yes, we are. So Jamaica Association for the Deaf. Anywhere you search for us, you'll find us. We also have website, Facebook, Instagram.
This is 2019. This is social media. It's all there. Just jump on your phone, jump on your computer. You get all the information that you need.
And even if they can't find us at JAD, if they message me on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, I will do my best to respond. All right,
there you go. We do this every Thursday live on Facebook. I've been your host, Vaughn Davis, and this has been Studio 58A Live. Thank you again for joining us, and please have a wonderful day. Hold on. Can you sign that to the people so that they can have a wonderful day? What
so
she
this
said.
Is have. This is wonderful or awesome. This is day.
All right. What she said. From me, on behalf of her, from me to you.